June 6th, by the way, which I will never forget ever, the day that I call when we got invaded, to now, the ICE is here every single day. They do raids all of the time, but it's not to the magnitude and it's not as extreme as it was before, meaning chasing up and down the street, going after people selling fruit. It happens in a more, let's say, discreet way, but it is still here. My executive directive said a couple of things. In the state of California, they passed a law that says ICE agents cannot be completely masked. They have to reveal themselves. So that right now is pending in the court. As mayor, I have authority over the police commission that I appoint, and they have authority over the police department. So my executive directive told the commission to come up with how LAPD would implement this state law should the court uphold it. Now, last year, I would have said, there's no way the court's going to uphold this. But I think we have seen that in almost every city, culminating in Minneapolis, it has escalated with more and more aggressive and brutal tactics, of course, leading to the murder of 2 people in Minneapolis, but many, many more people have died since the start of these raids, either during the raids or especially in detention. I do think that the Republicans began to raise some questions during and after Minneapolis. We have a new head of DHS, so all of us are on pins and needles to say, is something changing? And given what I believe is the administration's role with the Supreme Court, I do hold out hope that maybe they will stop some of this madness. There is no rationale in the world for an ICE agent to be masked. You cannot say it's for their safety when we have law enforcement officers who are here 24 hours a day, who do go after armed criminals as opposed to people in Home Depot trying to get a day's work. And they're never masked. They have to wear ID. They have to have a business card. And so how do you square with that? The other thing my executive directive said is that we ban ICE from staging on any city property. And what we have found over the last year that continues to this day is that they're sneaky. And so we don't know that they're going to roll up on a park. Or a couple of times they rolled up on police stations thinking they would be welcome, but the police stations did not allow them on the property. So this executive directive ordering them not to be on is really more a reassurance for city staff so that they can feel comfortable saying, this says, Ike, you cannot be here. Because needless to say, city staff would be terrified to see these cars roll up and men jump out with rifles.
Right. Mayor, we've seen ICE agents being dispatched across the country, but there's no doubt that the Trump administration has been particularly targeting blue cities like LA, like Chicago, like
Strictly
with their big invasion. So is this really all about politics for the Trump administration?
No, I think it's deeper than that. I think it was part to change our psyche. Because if you just think about it, when would you have imagined? I would have never imagined that I have to protect myself from my own government. ICE raids, that is nothing new. The magnitude, the brutality, the callousness, the inhumanity, and the economic impact has never been to this scale. And by the way, I've been involved, supporting immigrant rights issues forever. And so one thing that we're lucky here is that we have a well-established immigrant rights infrastructure, organizations that have been around for literally since the wars in Central America, well, even before. So you're talking the 70s, 80s, and many of these organizations, of course, I've worked with over the years. So we were equipped to respond. That's not true in other cities. And the other thing that is not true, and I often try to tell people this, it's one thing to be a blue city in a super blue state, okay? But it's another thing to be a blue city in the Deep South. And those mayors are not able to do what I did here because they have to deal with the state government that supports this policy. And that if they don't not necessarily cooperate, but if they start resisting, that state government will join in the attack on these cities. So every city, I think, should be judged differently.
That's a good point. Like what's gone on in Memphis and Tennessee, for instance.
Can't compare it.
Right. Well, we have seen ICE agents swarming airports this week at Trump's direction. Can you tell us what the situation is at LAX, one of the country's biggest airports?
Fortunately, ICE is not there.
Okay.
They are not needed here. We have not had a problem. I was out of town in another city for a brief period of time, and I saw ICE agents, a lot of ICE agents. They were doing nothing. They were doing nothing. They were walking through the airport. And here's the rub. If you're a TSA agent and you haven't been paid in over 20 days, and you have the ICE agents who are being paid doing nothing, you can imagine how they feel. And so, but I want to go back to the psyche part. I do believe that part of this, in terms of a long-term change, was to get Americans used to the military. And you know, you think about it, it's now happened all over the country. Tens of thousands of different branches of the military or other parts of law enforcement. And I worried when I saw in Washington, D.C., tourists taking pictures with the National Guard. That worried me, because it's like, okay, we have settled in and we have accepted it, which means then that it's not going to be that much of a shock if something happens and they roll in, you know, the military. Whereas just think, a year ago, we would have never, ever imagined this.